Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for asking me. I don't know if this is working or not. I was grateful for the opportunity to be kind of forced to open a Mesillas Yesharim, so thank you. This is Perek Beis, but last week you did the Hakdama, and in the Hakdama what the Ramchal explains to us is that life in Olam Hazeh is a goal. It's not just the end, and there's a destination. And in the Hakdama he explains that the words of the Hakdama, the key words of the Hakdama are Sheyisparer v'yisamet etzel ha'adam, that it needs to be clarified, it needs to be true and clear. Machal v'so ba'olomo, what his goal is, what his obligations in this world are. And then the first thing that he goes on to do, he has a list of different traits a person needs in order to achieve their goals, their accomplishments in this world. The first one is Zihirus, and that's what Perek Beis is. And he begins, and those of you who have the handout, on the left I've put the text of the Mesillas Yesharim, and to the right are the other sources that I'm going to be referring to. If you don't have it, I think you'll still be able to follow. Says the Ramchal, Hinei inyan ha-zihirus, the topic of zihirus. Zihirus means being aware. Hu sheyiyeh ha'adam, that a person must be nizhar b'ma'asav, aware of his actions, uve'inyanav, and all of his matters. Koloma, that is, misbonein, to think. Sometimes awareness we might think it just means, I know what I'm doing. But misbonein is a much more complex term of knowing. And as you know, Chazal tells the word bina comes from mevin davar mitoch davar. That's the first reference there. It doesn't just mean to know. I know my name. I don't think when somebody asks me my name. Bina is to understand something. To take one piece of information we have, mevin davar, mitoch davar, from another thing that we know, from another situation. To apply information that we have from one place to another. And awareness in life doesn't just mean knowing. It means thinking and applying what we know to different situations. He goes on to say, umafakeach. We use the word pokeach ivrim, to open our eyes. Sometimes we know where we're going, but we're not really looking. We're not really thinking. When we know where we're going, it's with a clarity. I have a funny story, but that's what I think of when I read this, is I grew up in Manchester, England. I know somebody else here in the United States who also grew up in Manchester, England, and told me something that happened to them. This must have been pre-9/11, because it could never happen nowadays. They were traveling back home for a visit. They got to the airport and ended up on a plane going to Manchester, New Hampshire, because they just looked for Manchester. They didn't check UK. Sometimes we think we know where we're going, because we're going to Manchester. But Manchester, New Hampshire, Manchester, United Kingdom, rather different. The awareness, the understanding where we're going. It's not just generally vaguely, I know where I'm headed. It's to know with an awareness and a clarity. Continues the Ramchal, the Mesillas Yesharim, al ma'asav udrachav, about our actions and our ways. The Gra says on his, actually I'm not sure where he said this, but the Gra does tell us that after he read the Ramchal, the Mesillas Yesharim written by the Ramchal, that there's not a single extra word that he could find in the whole Sefer. And we look at this, al ma'asav, our actions, udrachav, and our ways. What's the difference between an action and the way we're going? Isn't one just a sum total of the other? And when we think about it, sometimes we have a goal, we have a standard. But ma'asav means every single action that we take being congruent, fitting in with that goal that we have. Sometimes we do something and nothing wrong with it, but is it really heading, is it really pulling us, is it really taking us in the right direction? Some actions, when they're taken out of context, might seem correct, but in context they're not so correct. Some actions taken out of context might seem wrong. So ma'asav and rachav, every single little action, but every action has to be also in reference to the larger goal, the direction that we're headed. Hatovim heimim lo, are they good, are they not? Levilti azov nafshos, that we don't leave our souls, lesakanas ha'avadon, to the danger of destruction, chas v'chalila. It's a pretty strong term, danger of destruction. We're not talking about doing bad things. The Ramchal is telling us if we don't think about what we do, if we're not aware of every single action, and the part that it plays in reference to our, broader goals in life, sakanas ha'avadon, we're in danger of destruction. And when we think about, a human person is made up of the two parts. There's the guf, the body, there's the neshama. Yet we're placed in a world of guf. It's a very physical world. And there's this constant tug of war from the day we're born between that neshama, which is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a chelek elokam ma'al, it's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this body that we've been put into. If we don't make an effort, the body will be drawn to Olam Hazeh. It will. It is physical. And without effort, that is where it goes. So says the Ramchal to us, "L'sakanas ha'avadon chas v'chalila." If we don't think and we kind of let nature take its course, then we're going down. We're going down without doing much. I know the mashal they always give is of the escalators, that takes no effort. But once you step onto that escalator, you're going up or you're going down. You're just moving. I know last summer it was a really hot day. My kids were playing outside. They came in, it was about 2 PM, really hot. And they said, "Oh, it's so hot, what can we do?" They wanted to be somewhere indoors. And one of my kids came up with the idea, "Let's go to Kennedy Airport." They like running around, there's so much to see, so much to do. There's air conditioned, it's indoors. I said, "Sure, no problem." I took them there, and we got drinks. And one of my kids discovered, those of you who've been in, I think it's Terminal 4 and 7, have these really long moving walkways. They're long terminals, they have these bridges, and there's these walkways that move. And one of my kids discovered, if you take your bottle of soda and just put it on the edge, on that moving handrail, then it goes, and they would run around, not on the moving walkway, and meet it at the end, and look, it's like a soda machine, it's delivering my soda to me. But I think of that, Marshall, that it's just one step on. But we've got to take a step, because it's like we're in that moving walkway constantly. We're always moving. And if we don't put our minds and our hearts to it, sakanas ha'avadon, we're moving in the wrong direction. We need to make sure that when we put that soda bottle, when we put ourselves and our actions onto something, that it is moving in the correct direction. So it continues Ramchal, v'lo yelech, and a person should not go b'mahalach hargelo, in the way of his habits, the way he's used to going, ki iver ba'afela, like a blind man in the dark. When I opened my Sefer Mesillas Yesharim, I hadn't looked at it in a while. This phrase was underlined. I wish I had known what I meant when I underlined it, but I took a look at it. Ki iver ba'afela, and it struck me, like a blind man in the dark. What's the difference between a blind man in the daylight and a blind man in the dark? Isn't it the same to the blind? Ki iver, like a blind person. Why does it have to say in the dark? And I heard a beautiful perush on this. I don't remember, I think it was a chizkuni, I'm not sure about that. But this is what I heard. A blind man feels secure in daylight because the blind man can count on everybody else around being able to guide him, being able to direct him, being able to help. But afela, that's when the blind man panics because his help is gone. We live in a world where we expect to just go along with everybody else around us. Whatever they're doing, we go with them. Everybody else is the seeing person. And we sometimes are all blinded, but we just go along with everybody else. But when it's dark, that's that panic because, hey, 1 minute, nobody else knows where they're going. Where am I going? Says the Ramchal, we can't live our life like that, like a blind man in the light, like a blind man in the dark. We've got to be a person who's going where we're going because we're going. Because we know where we're going, we know what we want to do, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. Not that we're like that blind man even in the light, just being guided by others. And if we don't think about what we do, ka'iver ba'afela, we'll end up like a blind man in the dark, and that's when there's panic, there's chaos. V'hinei, this is a thing. Shahasechel, that intellect, yichayavehu vadai, will certainly obligate a person. Once a person has knowledge, v'haskel, and wisdom, understanding, to save himself, v'livroach, and to run away, me'avadon nishmaso, from the destruction of his neshama. How's it possible? Sheyurt said that he would even want laha'alim enough to hide his eyes, mehatzalaso, from being saved. Once we realize this, isn't it obvious we're going to take care of ourselves? There's nothing as degrading, v'holelas, and as foolish, there can't be anything more foolish than just not taking care of yourself. And one who does this, is lower than an animal, that naturally in their nature, lishmoras atzmam, will take care of themselves. Every animal knows what is dangerous. What's dangerous to one animal isn't dangerous to the other. And even instinct, without any intellect, an animal knows what's dangerous, lishmoras atzmam, and can take care of themselves and keep away from dangers. Every animal knows what can attack it, knows what can harm it, and will keep away to the best of its ability. When it goes through his world, his bonus, without thinking in tova darko or ra'ah, whether he's doing good or bad, are we any better than an animal? We're worse than an animal, because even the animal takes care of himself and keeps away from bad. A human being with a neshama inside of them who cannot keep away from what is bad for the neshama, less than animal. So I decided to talk a little bit about the difference between man and animal and how it relates to our deeds. So I opened up the Sefer Bereshis, had a look at when man was made. The second quote that you have over here is from Koheles. It's a pasuk that's well known. We quote it sometimes in davening. Umosar ha'adam min ha'behema. The difference between beast and man. Oyin is nothing. Ki hakol havel, because everything is really nothing. Hakol holech al makom echad, everything ends up in the same place eventually. Hakol hayam min ha'afar, everything came from the dust. But hakol shav el ha'afar, and everything returns to the dust. Mi yodea. But the person who knows, ruach b'nei ha'adam, the ruach, and it's interesting, I'll get back to this in a minute, why the word ruach is used here. B'nei ha'adam of a man, ha'ola hi lamala, can rise upward afterwards after death. The ruach ha'behema, the spirit of man, ha'yoredes hi lamata, will fall down, la'aretz, to earth. Says Rashi, litain din v'cheshbon. Animal dies, man dies. However, a man after death is responsible, is held accountable. There's accountability. An animal, the cow's not going to be asked, were you a burger or a steak? It's irrelevant. A human's going to be asked, what did you do? What did you do? What did you make of yourself? What did you become? The story is told of Rav Elia Lapian, when he was a young child. He was playing a little, like a child, at home one day, and he smashed a glass. And his mother gave him a little patch. She gave him a smack. And he was upset at her. A few days later, one of the chickens from outside got into the house and was running around, flapping its wings all over the place in the house, smashed 5 glasses. The mother shooed it back out of the house and didn't do a thing. Went to his mother and he said, Mama, I smashed 1 glass, you gave me a patch. The chicken smashed 5. You didn't do anything to the chicken. She looked at him and she said, Elia, are you a chicken? You know better. You can do better. You're not a chicken. You know better. You could have stuck the chicken. It's just a chicken. We have no expectations. We humans, we have, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has expectations of us. We're capable, we can. So here's the bit in Bereshis where man is made. In Perek Aleph, when it talks about the Sheishes Yimei Bereshis, it talks about Brias HaAdam. Few Pesukim later, the next Perek, this is quote number 3, Vayitzer Hashem Elokim, Es HaAdam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu formed man, Afar min HaAdama, that's a reference again to what Koheles was talking, Shlomo was talking about in Koheles. He made us out of dust from the earth, thank you. Vayipach ba'apav, and he blew into our nostrils. Nishmas chayim, a living neshama. Vayhi ha'adam lenefesh chaya, and then man became a living soul. A living creation. Rashi talks about this and says if you look at the creation of every single animal, the term nefesh chaya is used with all the other animals. So what makes man superior to animal? If nefesh chaya is a description of behemos, of chayos also, then what's the difference between me and the animal? Says Rashi, Af behema v'chaya nikru nefesh chaya, even the animals and the beasts, the wild and the domestic ones, are called nefesh chaya, ach, but, zu shel, and this part of the quote is over here on Rashi, zu shel adam, this one of man, the nefesh chaya that a man has, chaya shebekulon, is more alive than all of them. Why? Shemitosef bo dea v'dibor. The nefesh chaya of an animal is what gave it life. Life in an animal, we know the scientific definition of life. It can move, it can change, it can grow, it can eat, it can reproduce. But the definition of life, of living for a human is dea v'dibor. Knowledge and the ability to communicate. Animals communicate. It's a very primitive form of communication. Animals cannot learn another form of communication. The horse cannot be taught to quack like a duck. The duck cannot be taught to call like a bird. They're different. Man has the gift of dea, of knowledge. Dibor. Our dibor is so much more sophisticated. I'm communicating to you in English. We're all sitting here reading Hebrew. That's already 2 forms of dibor, of communication. There are probably people in this room who speak other languages. Right? We can find different modes of communication. Dibor isn't limited to something instinctive. The noises we make when we cry, that might be instinct. Dibor is something more intellectual. Quote number 4, Onkelos. Onkelos right over here, when it talks about creation of man, and it says, V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, it says, L'ruach memalala. And here we have that word ruach, right, which the Ramchal quoted earlier. I said we'd get back to it, I've lost where it is. The ruach, it's something, it's not physical, it's a ruach. It's something beyond the physical that we have inside of us. We term it as a spirit. We know that it's a chelek elokami ma'al, it's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a kedusha. It's something intangible, it's not quantifiable. It's not limited, it's unlimited because it's kedusha. Kedusha is not limited. The physical is limited, kedusha isn't. It says Onkelos, L'ruach memalala. Memalala is the Aramaic word for speech. And his translation, it's not an explanation, his translation of the term nefesh chaya is a speaking spirit. It's a spirit that can speak. And that is the biggest difference between man and animal. So going back again just to Koheles. What Koheles, Shlomo Melech in Sefer Koheles is telling us, the difference between man and beast is that one day we're going to be held accountable. There is a certain responsibility. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Torah, Rashi explains it to us, that what makes man, what gives man this accountability, this responsibility, and that is Deyav Dibor, knowing and understanding. The Kleaka says something really interesting here. First thing that he says is, and it's not on your sheet, my apologies, is Tzeil Lamad Mi Hanofeach. You've got to understand, where does this come from? Right? We have a nefesh chaya, as Rashi said, nefesh chaya, every animal, every beast is a nefesh chaya, but the only time it says vayipach ba'apav, he blew it into his nostrils, that's with man. Our nefesh chaya comes from a different place. How can you compare nefesh chaya, which came from nefesh chaya, obviously from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but not directly, to a nefesh chaya which was blown directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu into us? Tzeil Lamad Mi Hanofeach. Who was the one who blew? There's your difference between man and beast. Comes from Hashem. Then says the Kaleach, and this is quote number 5, which you do have in front of you. It does continue on to the next page. It's a long, sorry, it doesn't. Or at least I'm not sure on your copy if it does or doesn't. On mine it doesn't. I think I have a different version. Says the Kaleach, number 5. In a neshama bo b'poal, the neshama is not, sorry, let me just go back a little and explain again. Well, the Kaleach is explained to us, I mentioned this earlier, I just want to clarify. Man was made. It was a while later, I mean, in terms of minutes, hours, but in the Pesukim, at the creation of man, it doesn't explain the Yipach Ba'apav Nishmas Chaim, that came later. In the Kaleakar, one of the things the Kaleakar is doing for us is explaining why when man was created, does it not say immediately, man was created, man was created, is that too loud? No. Okay, I'm sorry. Why when man was created, did it not say immediately, Vayipach Ba'apav Nishmas Chaim? Why doesn't it say it then? Why does it say it later? Kleoka says as follows: Ein haneshama bo b'poel ki im b'koach. The neshama isn't there in action. It's not a fact. It's not just that it is. Ki im b'koach. It's there. It's a potential. It's not something that you can just put in a person. There it is. It's a potential. The possibility is there. It doesn't mean the action is there. It doesn't mean that the fulfillment is there. The possibility is there. Shelo yit'eh ha'adam. The person should not make a mistake regarding himself, lemor to say, shebelo yigia, that without effort, va'amal and hard work, yavo lidei shleimuso. If when we were created, we would have been given this neshama immediately, we would say, you know what, I'm done, finished, I'm created. But, ela hakol toloi b'foal kapav, ki yesh biyado tamid lachlif v'lahamir. It came later. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show us we were created, we weren't done yet. We weren't done yet. Something was put inside of us which needed effort. Animals were created, done. Man was created. Then something was added later. It was added later and it wasn't done. It's up to us. Being done or not is our decision. It's there. We can always change. We can always improve. We know that. We talk about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us, and Hashem wants us, it's the effort. It's the effort. What happens to us is beyond our control. It's what we do with our actions that is what we are held accountable for. That's what we're responsible for. The Kleaka goes on to say that on the first of the 5 Sheishes Yimei Bereshis, at the end it says, Vayar Hashem ki tov. Everything was good. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man, it doesn't say that, ki tov. There are many explanations for it, but following in line with what the Kleakar says, he explains it so nicely. Was man going to be good? Hopefully. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't say it yet, because he didn't know yet. Because man wasn't created complete. Animals and the world around us was complete. Once the trees were there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could look at them, nothing was changing. The trees were the way they were. The plants, it was all grown. The birds, the oceans, everything was done. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could look at it and say, this is as good as it's going to get. I can now give my opinion. Ki tov. It's beautiful. It's good. When it came to mankind, we were made, b'koach, not b'poal. We were made with potential. It wasn't done yet. HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't say ki tov because he doesn't know. It's up to us. And it's at the end of our life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can look at us and say ki tov. Yes, what I created on that 6th day of creation, tov. You've used that potential and it is good. But that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't say yet. The next quote that you have, quote number 6. And again, still talking about the differences between man and animal, because the differences between man and animal are really what differentiate us and what make us human. And we have to understand our differences, because if we don't understand them, then what makes us better than them? So the Malbim says, it's a long Malbim, I tried to pull out a few pieces of it. And he says that he gives 5, I only quoted 4. There are 5 main differences between man and animal. It's interesting because we think, man has midos, man does have midos, but so do animals. And you're all familiar with different expressions from Koheles, from Mishlei, from Pirkei Avos. Have oz kan nomer kal kanesha. We talk about the gevura of an ari, we talk about the tznius of a chatul, we talk about the, come on, what are the midos? Oh, right. We learned zerizos from the ant. Thank you. There are so many midos that we learn from different animals. Says the Malbim. Heimrak nitzus chalash hameir b'nafsham. It's like a flicker of light in their soul. V'nivdalim herchik rav min or hakochos ha'ela hameir b'nefesh ha'adam. The comparison between, and he actually talks about light, the term light. We use the word light for many things. We talk about the sun giving us light. We talk about the fixture here providing us with light. We light a candle, it gives us light. When you really think about that, the light of the sun, the light of a candle, it's almost ludicrous to use the same term for the light from the sun and the light from a candle, because they are so far between. But yet, we do use the same term. Says the Malbim that we use the term of a midah, even though the difference between the midah, the gevura of an ari has strength, physical strength, king of the jungle, stronger than all other animals. Yet there's another type of gevura, the type that man has. The gevura too, Chazal ask, Ezehu Gibor, and we all know what the answer is, HaKoveshes Yitzro. Can we compare the gevura of Kavishas HaYetzer with the gevura of an Ari? We look at the lion and we marvel how it rips open an animal. So strong. But the gevura to do the right thing, there's no comparison, it's light years away. It's like the light of the sun and the light of a candle. For a human being living in a physical world to control themselves, not to be drawn to the physical, and to control the Yetzer Hara, which whatever midah the Yetzer Hara is fighting us, no matter what it is, but to control the gevura of a man whose kovish is Yetzer, no comparison, no comparison. Have a azkanama, to be bold like a leopard. So, courage, strength, confidence, those are things that we all recognize, we all appreciate. They're encouraged in the world we live in very much. But that's instinctive. The leopard doesn't make a decision, I'm going to be courageous. But when we need to say something to somebody that's difficult to say, but it's the right thing to say, that courage, that's not instinctive. That's something that really is hard. To do the right thing when those around us are doing the wrong thing. That kind of courage, comparing the courage to do what's right to the courage of a leopard, it's a joke, isn't it? The leopard doesn't think to do that. It's just instinctive inside the leopard, right? We're not the chicken who broke the glasses. We're a child who could have not broken the glasses. So that's the first difference, is that yes, we talk about the midos of animals, we talk about the midos of man, but understand, midos in animal is a flicker. It's a flicker, a tiny bit in comparison to what a midah inside a human being can be. Base, the second difference. Lo yimatze bo rak midah achas. You can only find one midah in an animal. Because when you think about it, every midah that we know that's related to an animal is related to one particular animal. Az kanamer, kal kanesher, gibor ka'ari, rotz katzvi. But we don't talk about all the different attributes that an ari has. You know why? Because it doesn't. It doesn't have them. It has one. Look at a man. We can have gevura. We can have azus. We can have zerizos. We can have every single midah that is given. We can have tznius, the tznius that we learn from a cat. We can have every single midah that an animal, that any single animal can have. So says the Malbim, base, lo yimatzebo rak midah achas, an animal you can only find one midah in each animal, aval ha'adam, kolel berucho, encaptures, and again, the word ruach, it keeps coming up. It's that spirit, it's that chelek elokami ma'al that gives us this koach, kol kochos ma'aseh bereshis. Every koach that was put into the world, that ability is within us. We all know that different people have a tendency towards certain midos more than the other. However, the ability, the potential, like the Kaleyakar said earlier, potential is always there. Says the Malbim, a third difference between animal and man. Ha'adam yishamish b'kol kocho l'inyanim rabim kololim v'yuchadim. When an animal has a midah. The midah applies in one particular situation only, right? We learn zerizus, we learn it to be industrious, to work hard from the namala, from the ant. But we all know, right? What is it about the ant that the ant is known for working hard at? Right? For gathering food, and we see the efforts. If you've ever watched it, it's fascinating. I've watched it. My kids dropped, I think it was a piece of apple once on the front path. And an army of ants came, and together this army of ants was moving this piece of apple. And watching the ants at work, it's true, we've all seen it. You can see it happen. But the ant can't work hard for anything else. This ability to work hard is an instinct. There's no daya there. There's no thought. There's no bina. The ant doesn't wake up one morning and say, hey, you know, I've realized that I can work really hard to move a piece of apple. Maybe I could also work hard to create a 5-story home for myself. The ant has no application of its hard work. It just knows how to do what it's supposed to do. Man has a midah. We can apply every midah we have to numerous situations. There's not instinct. Our midos go along with the daya, the dibur, the ability to differentiate, and the difference. That's the third difference between man and beast. The fourth difference, b'nefesh ha'adam, the soul of a man, gam nimtzeu hefuchi ha'kochos. We also find opposites or extremes of kochos, ga'ava va'anava, rachamim va'achazorios, habusha va'ha'azus. If you think about it, it doesn't really make much sense. Can a person be strong and weak at the same time? No. In the physical world, you're strong or you're weak. Can a person be arrogant and modest at the same time? Some people are more arrogant, some are more modest. What does it mean to have both? And says the Malbim to us, mankind has the ability, not just the ability, but potential, it's there in every single one of us, to have midos which seem to be the opposite of each other. But they're needed because we need all these midos. And just like sometimes we need to be strong, sometimes we need to be weaker. Sometimes we need to give in to others. We need that. We need the concept of bitul. How are we ever going to seek and accept advice from others if we have too much gevura? A person who's strong, who's opinionated, that can be wonderful. Because when everyone around us is doing something wrong and we know it to be wrong, then our strength is what tells us to do the right thing. But what when there's something we've been doing for years and years and years and years? And suddenly somebody tells us, hey, you know what, I just heard something about that. Maybe we shouldn't do it that way. The person who's only strong, I've been doing this for 50 years, my mother did it too, that's the way it is. But somebody who's got that bittul, that ability to say, you know what, let me listen, day of a dibor, let me listen, let me think. And they think about it. An animal cannot have that. If an animal is a gibor, the animal can't change its mind. The lion can't take a look at the sheep and say, oh, you know what, this one I'm not going to kill. If the animal's hungry, it kills. There is no thought. Other midos, rachamim and achzarias that Malbim quotes. Rachamim, beautiful. Everybody wants to have rachamim, right? You want to be like a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Mahu rachum afatal rachum. Achzarias, what kind of place does achzarias have in a Jewish person? However, we know that there are mitzvahs which may seem achzar. There's mechias amalek. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that we have to do that. There is a place for achzaras. Those of us who have children know that sometimes you have to act in a way you feel like an achzar. You feel cruel. But we do it for the ultimate good of the child. And the achzarius is really a form, we know, of rachamim. We're doing it because we're kind, because we care. Man has this ability. The ability to have a midah, to be really good at the midah, to strengthen it, to work on it, and at the same time to have the ability to do something which is the exact opposite of that very midah. The last example that the Malbim gives here is habusha baha'azus. Habusha is modesty. It's sometimes translated as shame, sometimes it can be baha'azus, and arrogance and being bold, the azkanomer. Right? We need that busha, that's easy to understand. The azus, the audacity to tell somebody they're doing something wrong if it needs to be said. That takes azus. Doesn't mean it has to be done in a way of achzarius. It can be done in a form of rachamim. It can be done kindly and gently, but sometimes it requires azus. And that is what makes man different from an animal. So just running through again before we move on in the Mesillas Yesharim, the 4 differences that the Malbim explains between animal and man. The first is that the midos that an animal has, same names as the man. But the potential for the midah in a human being is so much stronger than in an animal. The second difference is that an animal has one midah. Each animal has its specific midah. Mankind, numerous midos. The third difference is, man can apply the midos that he has to numerous situations. Whereas with an animal, because it's instinctive, it applies just in one area, just in one format. Down at the fourth difference is, man is capable of having midos that seem to be opposing. An animal cannot do that, cannot have that. Going back now to the Mesillas Yesharim, which is probably on the first page of your handout. So now we understand, man is not a beast, we're men. We have responsibility, we're not the chicken. And what gives us this responsibility? Man was created, he was created different from animal. We have Deya v'Dibor that animal does not have. We have that. So I'll tell you where I'm reading from. Is it underlined? Oh, yes, I'm reading from there now. So going back to the Ramchal, we're different. We're not like animal, we're not like beast. By nature, they take care of themselves. I think I read this. An animal instinctively runs away from what's bad for it. When it goes in this world, the least bonus without thinking, if it's good, if it's bad, like a blind person, again a blind person, who walks along the riverbank, his danger is real and strong. And the possibility of bad happening to him is far more likely than of him being saved. Because lack of precaution, because of natural blindness, or because of self-imposed blindness, choosing to close our eyes, doesn't make a difference whether a person is naturally blind or chosen to be blind. The results are going to be the same. Whether a person's walking along the riverbank blind or closed eyes, they're both in danger. It doesn't make a difference. And we human beings on the Midah of Zehirus, if we can walk through this world with our spiritual eyes closed, we are in danger. Before I move on to some examples, just an example something that happened to me last year which really spoke to me. My brother got married in Switzerland. I was there for the chasna and rented a car. We were driving around. I got pulled over by a Swiss policeman, gave me a list of things I was doing wrong, and one of them was the GPS is attached to the windshield. You're not allowed to do that. I looked at him like, where else is the GPS supposed to be if not attached to the windshield? No, you're not allowed to do that. In Switzerland, you're not allowed to have a GPS attached to the windshield. And I said, how am I supposed to know that? He said something I didn't understand, but I'm guessing that what he said to me was, if you're driving in Switzerland, you need to know the rules of the road. I'm guessing that's what he was trying to say to me. And we're in this world. We're trying to get somewhere, right? We have an obligation in this world. If we want to get through this world, we can't just say, I didn't know. You know, on Yom Kippur, when we say vidui, one of the things that we say is, v'yodim u'v'lo yodim. We're admitting the things that we didn't know. How can you admit something you didn't know? We're taking responsibility for not knowing. Not knowing is not an excuse. I can't say, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to have the GPS there. If I'm driving there, I need to know. It's my responsibility. We're in this world. We have a responsibility to know. I didn't know is just not acceptable. And the next parak. The next paragraph in the parak. V'hinei. Yirmiyah was complaining on the evils of the people of his generation. They were afflicted, he says, with this midah. What was the midah? They were hiding their eyes from their actions without looking at what they were doing. Did they even ask themselves the question, should this be done or not done? And he said about them, nobody is regretting his actions. I'm living in a world, Yirmiyah lived before Korban by his Rishon, and he kept warning people, if you don't stop, the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. And it didn't happen overnight. Slowly, life in Yerushalayim, life in Eretz Yisrael changed. It did. And says Yirmiyah, nobody's saying, hey, look at the world around me, maybe I need to do something. Limor, because Limor. Kulo shav b'mutzasam, they were all running around in their hurry to run, kasus sholteif b'milchama, like a horse that runs headfirst into war. It's interesting because it's an animal that we're compared to. When we don't think, what are we compared to? An animal, because we're no different than the animal. So there's two things about the example that Yirmiyah gives. One of the things is as follows. I read this yesterday. I didn't know which Meforish I was reading. It was in the Mikros Gedolos Yirmiyah, but I couldn't understand who was saying this. A horse that runs to battle. If you look at the pasuk, the quote again, it says, Kulo shav. The word shav means to return, to go back. Everybody goes back. B'mrutzasam, where they're running, like a horse running into battle. Is he going back or is he running? And what the Meforish explained is like this. The horse, and this again is instinct, or maybe it's training, but the horse has this ability. When attacked and the horse feels like the enemy is approaching, what does the horse do? The horse does take a few steps back, shove, it goes back, and then what does it do? It wants to pick up speed so it can charge. So it takes those few steps back, it goes back in its running, so that it can charge forward. Said this Pirush, human beings are just the same. What happens to us sometimes? We realize something isn't going right. So, we take a step back. But if we're like the sus, we take a step back, we don't really think, and what do we do next? We go right back into it. Right? Where's the horse going? The horse is charging into war. The horse is risking its life. Does the horse realize that? The horse doesn't know that. The horse sees an enemy, it's trained to charge, it steps back, and goes head first into a possibly lethal situation. That's what the horse does. Don't we do the same sometimes? We stop back, we start to think about our actions, but if we don't really, really think about them, we just go right back into doing the same thing again. And the horse is charging, possibly to its death. If we don't really think, if we don't have that true zehirus, awareness of our actions, we're going right back to sakanas ha'avadon, to spiritual destruction. We're doing the same thing as the horse, because when man doesn't think, doesn't use his day of a dibor, we're no different. Mosar ha'adam min ha'behema ayim, we are no different. The other thing that Rashi says, and I don't know if I put this on, no, I don't think it's on your sheet, I'm sorry. There's a pasuk in Tehillim. It's interesting, because last night when I was preparing, I asked my husband if he has any other quotes that were a good idea, and he says, the pasuk in Tehillim, Al tihiyah kasus keferet ein havin, again the horse. Don't be like a horse, don't be like a mule, ein havin, who doesn't understand. And I wanted to look it up, and I didn't have time. I teach. I came into the classroom this morning, and every morning we start the day after davening with some Tehillim. Guess which parak Tehillim we're reading today? Parak Lamed Beis. Al tihiyah kasus keferet ein havin. So I said, I've got to look this one up. So I looked it up. The first thing that Rashi says is as follows. A horse has no understanding, but we can see it. If you think about the actions of a horse, when a man wants to use a horse for work, what does he do? He doesn't want the horse to get distracted by its instinct to eat. So he puts that piece in the horse's mouth. And really he's kind of punishing the horse. He's not letting him do what he wants to do. What does the horse do? It chomps down on it, it bites down, it doesn't get angry, it doesn't react as though, I don't like what you're doing, you're not letting me eat. He doesn't realize that this bit in its mouth that it seems to enjoy chewing on isn't really good for him, it's not going to help him. And then the converse, when the groom comes in to clean up the horse, to brush its hair, to dry it off if there's any sweat on its body, and it's rubbing and it's brushing, what does the horse do? It kicks, right? Sometimes it bites, right? Sometimes they have to tie the muzzle around the horse in order to clean the horse, because otherwise the horse is going to bite. But here we have two situations to example. One is for its good and one isn't for its good. And how does the horse react? When you put the bit into the mouth and it's not really for the horse's own good, it's because I want to get the horse to work, and the horse is calm. Right? Eno Mevin does not understand. He doesn't understand what's good for you, what's not good for you. Yirmiyah was saying to Klal Yisrael, things are happening. We're living in a difficult time. It was before the Churban that the famine was starting. Life was getting difficult. And you're not thinking, you're not realizing that these things that are happening to you, like the horse that's being brushed, and it kicks, it tries to bite the person who's brushing it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was brushing Klal Yisrael. He was trying to show them, you're doing something wrong, you're going to lose the Beis HaMikdash. And what did? They kicked. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to hear. We're like that horse. We don't want to know. We don't really look at these things that are happening to me. Do I think clearly? Oh, it looks bad. Do I understand? Where's this really coming from? Is it really for my good? Is it really for my bad? That's what Yirmiyahu was telling Klal Yisrael, and that's true of all times. Right? We know that everything in Tanakh, it applies in all generations. You know, so we're not living in a time that there's no Beis HaMikdash. But Chazal tell us if we live at a time when the Beis HaMikdash wasn't built, there's no difference. Right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us today, to this very day, we can't go through life like that horse that just goes with its instinct, rushes into the battle, because we could be rushing into our own spiritual destruction. Continue with the Mesillas Yesharim. V'hainu, that is, Shahayu wrote Fin, they were chasing, V'holchim and going, B'mrutzas hergelam, with the hurry, the running, hergelam of habit, V'darcheihem on their ways, M'bli she'anichu zman la'atzmam, without leaving time for themselves, L'dakdeik, to consider, to be particular, Al ha'ma'asim, about the actions, V'hadarachim and the ways, V'nimtzah we find, Shehim noflim b'ra'ah, they fall into evil, B'li ra'ah so without even seeing it. They don't even notice what they're going into because of that zehirus. And again, the concept before, the difference between natural blindness and self-imposed blindness doesn't make a difference. When a person isn't looking, they don't see. If we don't consider, if we don't have the zehirus, we don't think about our ways, then we won't see where we're going, and suddenly we end up in a mess and we start thinking, hey, how did I get here? Continues the Ramchal, V'ulam, hinezos be'emes achas mitachbulos hayetzer ra. This is one of the ways, one of the strategies of the Yetzer Hara, or Maso in his deceit and his cunningness, lachbid avodaso, to increase the work, bismidos constantly, al libos b'nei ha'adam, on the hearts of mankind, ad shelo yisha'er lahem revach, until we don't have a moment, lehisbonin, to think, ulehistakel, and to look, be'izu derech him holchim, which way we're going. Ki yodehu, because the Yetzer Hara knows. If we would only pay the tiniest bit of attention to our ways, vaday, it's obvious, it's certain, immediately we would begin, if we could only start, right, like that conveyor belt, if we could only step on and start realizing what we're doing, we'd realize how long we can be going, and we'd stop. So what does the Yetzer Hara do? The Yetzer Hara busy. That's what the Yetzer Hara does. And the Yetzer Hara is so smart, he knows we're good. So what does he get us busy with? Good things. Be busy doing chesed, be busy doing this, be busy doing that. Why? Because, and this is again back to the beginning, where the second line of the Mesillas Yesharim, mefakech, we've got to be smart, al ma'asav u'drachav, about our ways and our deeds. The Yetzer Hara knows when he meets a bad person. Easy to distract him. When the Yetzer Hara meets a good person, much harder to distract. So he distracts him with goodness. He does. He makes a tremendous number of chesed parties. You all know the classic example of the mother who's so busy taking care of everybody else, she doesn't have time for her kids. Right? That's what the Yetzer Hara does to us. And when we're good, the Yetzer Hara distracts us with goodness. So it's even more difficult to see what the Yetzer Hara is doing. Continues the Ramchal, V'harezeh, and behold this, Me'in atzas paro, is in fact the idea of paro. Even paro was smart enough to know this. She'amar, Tichad ha'avoda al ha'anashim, increase the workload on the men. She'hayamis kavein, she'lo lahanich lahem revach klal. He didn't want to give them any time. Levilti yitnu leiv or yosimu itzan, they don't plot against him. He knew that if the Jews weren't working hard enough, they'd have the time, they'd have the energy, they'd have the focus to plot a rebellion against him. Elohim mishtadel, but he tried, lahafriya liba mikol his bonus, to distract their hearts from all thoughts, the kolach hasmadas ha'avodah, by implementing constant work, habiltim hafsekas, without a break. And we know that he did that both physically and spiritually. He didn't want them to have Shabbos either, because he knew that if they have time to think, he was thinking from a physical perspective. I give them time to take a physical break, they're going to collect themselves, they're going to gather their energy and rebel against me. But he was also aware that the time to think would give him time to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, time to reach out, time to do teshuvah. Then his slave labor would be over. Continues the Ramchal, Kehi atzas hayetzer hara mamash al bnei adam. The Yetzer Hara is the same, identical with mankind. Ki ishmul chamahu, because the Yetzer Hara is like a soldier. Umulumad ba'armimus, and is well versed in deceit. V'ef shar, it's impossible, limalei mimenu, to escape from the clutches of the Yetzer Hara, ela except, b'chachma rabbah, a tremendous amount of wisdom, b'hashkafa gedola, and a broad perspective. Humash and Navi tzukveach, this is what the Navi pleads, what Omer and says, simu levachem al darkeichem, pay attention to your ways. Haggai was talking at this time, it was before, I hope I'm getting this correct, I think, it was before Bayis Sheni, when Bnei Yisrael were not putting in the effort to build the Beis HaMikdash. The opportunity was there, and they just weren't. They just weren't. In the previous Korban, you have almost the contrast here. Yirmiyah Navi saying, pay attention to your ways, you're going to lose the Beis HaMikdash. And they did. And mankind still doesn't learn, because when they had an opportunity to build the Beis HaMikdash, Ezra Nehemiah wanted to take Klal Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael to build the Beis HaMikdash. They weren't thinking, where are we going? They were thinking about the physical aspects of life. We're here, we're in Bethel, we're secure, we're comfortable. They weren't thinking, what is my obligation in this world? Where am I ultimately headed? Where's my neshama going? They thought about the physical security and comfort of their guf. Pay attention to your ways. You've got to look ahead, you've got to see where you're going. Shlomo Amar b'chachmas, Shlomo says, Al titin shina le'inecha, don't allow sleep to come to your eyes, usunuma la'afapecha, and slumber to your eyelids. Hinotzel kitzvi, and again we see an animal. Hinotzel kitzvi miyad. Save yourselves immediately like a deer. The tzvi is known for being quick. V'chachamim zechron l'vracha amru, kol hasamro chusav ba'olam hazeh. And this again is referring to the Hakdama that you did last week. Whoever pays attention to his ways in this world, will see the Yeshua, will see the salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, that's back to the Hakdama, the concept that we need to know where we're going. We need to have a goal, otherwise we're just going around in circles. Last paragraph. Ufashutu, and it's simple. Before the last paragraph. So what Ramchal is telling us is that we're living in this world. It's a little scary because there's this tug of war, right? We learned in Parashas Bereshis HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man, and he took this chelek elokam ma'al, this tremendous potential for kedusha. It is kedusha, and the amount of potential as is unlimited potential for kedusha. But he put it into this physical container. Not only did he put it into a physical container, al guf, he put it into a physical container in a physical world. Right, so like that conveyor belt, when there's that tug of war, naturally the guf, the physical, the gashmius, is going to win. There is so much more gashmius. We're in a gashmius body, we're in a gashmius world. And it is scary. And this whole discussion so far, I'm not an animal, I'm a human, I've got to be different. That's a tremendous responsibility. And it can be scary. I mean, come on, I can get dizzy just thinking that every single thing I do, I need to be thinking, is it right, is it wrong, is it leading me to my direct goal, is it not? And the last paragraph is a reassuring paragraph, and the Ramchal ends by saying the following. Pashutu, it's simple. Even if a man makes the effort to take care of himself and to look out for his actions, it's impossible to be saved. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or if not for HaKadosh Baruch Hu helping us. Ki hayetza, because the Yetzer Hara is talking about it. Ki hayetza, takif ma'od, it's extremely powerful. Like the Pasuk says, so the Rasha looks to the tzaddik, wants to kill him. It's not just talking about the Rasha and the tzaddik, it's talking about the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara's goal in this world is like Paro, to distract us. Distract. And the reason, of course, we know is Bechira, that if I do everything right, because I'm a horse that's instinctive, I'm programmed and trained to do everything right, I'm not that great. Right? The performing animals in the circus, we look at them and we marvel, but really, is it really that amazing? We know what happens to the tiger who doesn't do what it's supposed to do at the circus. Right? It's going to get whipped, it's going to get, I don't know what they use, the electric charges, I don't know what, it's not going to get fed. So is it such a big deal that the tiger performs in that way, that the elephant stands up on its hind legs and jumps around? It's not such a big deal. But human being, for me to do the right thing, there's no instant punishment, nothing's going to happen. I'm still going to have food tomorrow if I do the right thing. If I do the wrong thing, and that's the difference over here. Kitzofa Rosh Hashanah, the Yetzer Hara keeps trying to distract us, keeps trying to tell us nothing's going to happen. We have the bechira, we have that ability to make the right choices. But then, David HaMelech and Tehillim ends off, Hashem lo ya'azvenu, but the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't forsake the tzaddik. That the Yetzer Hara is there, the world of Gashmius is there, distracting us constantly. Hashem lo ya'azvenu. B'chulei. But, im ha'adam mefakeach al atzmo, if man watches over himself, he opens his eyes, that word like pokeach ivrim, he opens his eyes. This is what Zehirus is about, being aware. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu ozro, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help him. V'nitzol min ha'yetzer ra, and he'll be saved from the yetzer ra. Aval. Im enu mefakeach hu al atzmo, if he doesn't watch over himself, v'adai it's certain, she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo yifakach alav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not take care of him. Ki im hu enochas, because if he doesn't care, mi ochas alav, who will care about him? This is what Chazal tell us. Whoever doesn't have an opinion on the matter, whoever doesn't have understanding, also the rachim alav. Don't feel sorry for him. He doesn't care to know. He's not trying. He doesn't want to go there. If I don't take care of myself, stand up for myself, set a direction for myself, who will? On the side of your page, there's two more quotes I want to end with. Both probably ones that you're familiar with. B'derech she'adam rotzeh leilech, bo molichin oso. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. He's the one who put this chelek elokam ma'al, put this tremendous potential for kedusha into our bodies. He put it there. He knows how hard the struggle is. He doesn't want us to do it all alone. He knows we cannot. He wants to see that we want. That is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. And he says, he promises us, the direction you want to go, ba molichin oso. Show that you want. Open your eyes. Look at where you're going. Don't be like that Iver. Decide where you're going. Know where you're going. Know that you want to do the right thing. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us on the way we want to go. The last quote here, quote you're very familiar with, is Pischo li open for me, Pesach kechudo shel machat, an opening like the eye of a needle. Va'ani says HaKadosh Baruch Hu has promised to us, Eftach l'chem will open for you, kepischo shel ulam, like that opening of a huge room. Right, we're standing in a big room here, it's a big open space, right? It's not a doorway here. Compare this to the eye of the needle, it's nothing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says take that one step. That one step, show that you want to be a human, you don't want to be the animal, I'll make it easy. I want to end with just, again, the concept that I gave the example at the beginning of my kids playing around on those conveyor belts, those moving walkways in the airport. I remember one time, one of the first times I saw one of those, I got onto the moving walkway, I stepped on, I was holding a heavy bag, and then I'm, going along. And somebody must have been with me, and we were going through a few of them. I think it was in London Heathrow, they have so many of those, it's a huge airport. And somebody said to me, why are you holding your bag? You're standing on a moving walkway. You can put it down. And I remember laughing at myself. I'm on the moving walkway, my legs aren't moving, but my arms are carrying my bag, I can just put it down. And when I go on those, I think of that. And I think of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us. All we need to do is take a step on. Then he's going to move us. We just need to open our eyes and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to know where I'm going. I want the right things in life. I'm willing to open my eyes. I'm willing to open my eyes, put down my bags of Gashmias, and say, I'm not going to hold on so tight to all those physical things in the world which really draw us away. They make us more like the animal, more like the horse. I'm going to take the step with my feet. I'm going to put down my heavy bags, my Gashmias that pulls me away, put those down, because I know that when I do that, I take that first step, the Zehirus, the awareness, I'm willing to open my mind, my eyes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will let me go. And that's my bracha to us, that we should all have that koach, the inspiration, to keep our eyes open, not to close them. Because once we're willing to open our eyes, to think, to look, well, we're no longer chickens, we're humans. And there's no greater honor that we could have than being true humans. Thank you.